Hey everyone, this is Michael again, and welcome to the AEW Dynamite review. And tonight's Dynamite was from the Landers Center in Southaven, Mississippi. And before I start the review, if you guys haven't checked out my previous video that I uploaded earlier, which was my top 10 most anticipated films for this year, definitely give it a watch if you haven't seen it. I give my top 10 list of films that I'm anticipating to see this year if I get a chance to. So, but definitely go check out the video if you guys haven't seen it. But Dynamite tonight, I thought the show wasn't a good show in my opinion. It was kind of a show tonight. But we had Hangman and Page and Kenny Omega versus Private Party. We saw Riho versus Kris Statalander for the AEW Women's World Championship, which ended terrible. And I'll talk about the match, as a whole. And then we had Sammy Guevara taking on Christopher Daniels. We also had the Rhodes brothers, Dustin and Cody, versus the Lucha brothers, Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix. We also had Jurassic Express versus the Best Friends and Orange Cassidy in a six-man tag. And we also got an answer if JON MOXLEY is going to be joining the Inner Circle. So we saw all that tonight. But all in all, the show as a whole wasn't that good. Wasn't a good show. But let's get on with the Dynamite review. So Dynamite opened up tonight with Hangman and Page and Kenny Omega versus Private Party, Isaiah Cassidy and Mark Gwen. And this was a fun tag team match. This was a good match, very entertaining match. Hangman and Kenny Omega worked, good here. And Private Party, always fun, entertaining. And, it was back and forth between them. And at the end of the match, you had Hangman and Page. He hits a buckshot lariat on Mark Gwen. Kenny Omega ends up hitting his V-trigger from behind to Mark Gwen. And Kenny Omega then ended up hitting the one-winged angel on Mark Gwen for the cover. So there you go. Hangman and Page and Kenny Omega end up winning the match. And, it was a point in the match where Hangman and Kenny Omega were chopping at Mark Gwen, and Mark Gwen was just going like, ah, ah. It's just funny, though, how Mark Gwen, does that with his, little girly screams. But overall, fun match between them. It was a good match. So Hangman and Kenny Omega win the match. Then we went backstage. We saw Pac had the Brutalizer locked in on Michael Nakazawa. So Pac ends up yelling at Kenny Omega that he did this. Pac ended up saying that if Omega doesn't give him the rubber match, things like this will continue to happen. So then we see Kenny Omega. He ended up running to the back to check on Nakazawa, his friend. And, this could be setting up for Kenny Omega versus Pac. So, didn't expect, Pac to, come in and brutalize and lock in the brutalizer on Michael Nakazawa. But then AEW Dynamite went to commercial, and during the commercial, it always has that split screen. We saw, fan offers, beer to Hangman. Hangman ends up drinking it. Hangman heads to, another section of the arena, drinks another beer with the group of fans. So Hangman was just hanging out with the fans, having fun, drinking some beer. He's walking through the crowd. He's talking with people. He was giving fist bumps to some of them. And, the cameras were showing, fan signs. One sign said, Hangover Page. Another one said, Hangman Page, drink my beer. So, Hangman was just hanging out with the fans there, having some fun, drinking some beer. So that was kind of cool to see, happen during the commercial break, where it was the split screen. And then we saw, after that, it was Riho versus Kris Statalander for the AEW Women's World Championship. This match was fucking terrible. This was a god-awful match. Brandy Rhodes was on commentary for the match. You saw Hikaru Shida and Britt Baker. They were sitting at ringside. And, Brandy was asked why she always comes out and has been cutting women's hair. Brandy ends up saying that she'll explain that when Excalibur explains why he wears a mask at commentary. So Excalibur ended up saying to Brandy, he was brought up in the Lucha Libre culture. And it's a tribute to that. And so then we see, the match happening. Kris Statalander, goes for a leg drop. She ended up missing that. Riho hits a hurricanrana. Riho then tries for the 619 to Kris Statalander. Statalander ended up catching Riho. Does a tilt-a-whirl backbreaker. And, it went to commercial. So then Riho and Statalander were up on the top. Riho gets dropped. Statalander goes up to the top. Ends up hitting the moonsault. Statalander end up, missing because Riho moved out of the way. So then we saw Riho hit a German suplex with a bridge to Statalander. So Statalander ended up kicking out of that. So Riho is put on the top rope, and Statalander ends up hitting a superplex from the top. Both women were down. And then we see Awesome Kong and Melanie, or as they were just calling her Mel on commentary. Both of them came down to ringside. Riho ends up hitting the flying knee to Statalander. Riho gets taken down to the floor. Mel ends up getting sent into the barricade. And the referee was distracted. Kris Statalander ended up hitting a suicide dive on Mel. And then Statalander ended up hitting a suicide dive on Awesome Kong. Brandy ends up getting up from the commentary table. She goes down and she gets right in Kris Statalander's face. And then we see this guy comes from under the ring. So this guy grabs Kris Statalander. And this guy goes by the name of Luther. And it's revealed that Luther is the fourth member of the Nightmare Collective. And we see Statalander gets dropped on the floor. And the Nightmare Collective end up telling, Riho to go in and win the match. So she ended up climbing to the top. Riho ends up climbing to the top. Fans were booing. And then we think, Riho is going to finish the match. But no. Riho then takes out Luther on the floor. So Riho gets back in the ring. Statalander ends up hitting a gorilla press. Riho ends up countering that with a crucifix bomb. Statalander kicked out of that. And Statalander goes for a discus lariat. She ends up hitting Riho. So Statalander goes to pin Riho. And Riho ended up kicking out. Statalander went for a pile driver on Riho. Awesome Kong ends up tripping up on Statalander. And that's when Riho got the cover. 1, 2, 3. There you go. Riho ends up winning the match thanks to Awesome Kong. Riho still retains the AEW Women's World Championship. And after the match was over, Riho didn't look too happy with how the match ended. But it was terrible match. I'm like, this whole thing with the Nightmare Collective is something that you would see on Monday Night Raw. Absolutely terrible. So, what happened after the match, post-match? Kong ends up hitting a clothesline on Kris Statalander. Riho then gets involved. She ends up trying to get Kong off of Kris Statalander. Mel gets in the ring, drops Riho. Hikaru Shida jumps over the barricade to help out Kris Statalander and also Riho. And Britt Baker, wanted nothing to do with this, so she ended up sitting back down. And then we saw Big Swole and Sunny Kiss. They also came out, to help out. So now it's basically, what happened. So Luther is now the fourth member of the Nightmare Collective. But all this was fucking terrible. The match itself was terrible. Then we had Sammy Guevara versus Christopher Daniels. And this was a very short match. This wasn't that good of a match. Sammy Guevara ended up getting the start on Christopher Daniels. Daniels ends up chopping away at Sammy Guevara. And towards the end of the match, Pentagon Jr., he was on the stage. He was yelling, "Hey, amigo, show me if you can." He was saying that to Christopher Daniels. Christopher Daniels, he was thinking about doing the Arabian Press, but he ends up taking a knee to the back of the head by Sammy Guevara. So because of that, Guevara ends up pinning Christopher Daniels. Sammy Guevara ends up winning the match. But very short match. Wasn't that good of a match. Post-match, after the match was over, we had the Dark Order. Evil Uno, Stu Grayson, John Silver, Alex Reynolds, and we had two other guys in the mask. The Dark Order ends up heading to the ring. Evil Uno is on the mic. He ends up saying that Christopher Daniels is a popular man today. He ends up saying that Christopher Daniels' fingerprints are all over these days. Evil Uno went on to say that had he not met Christopher Daniels 15 years ago, his life could be a lot different. So Evil Uno ended up saying that the fans don't believe in Christopher Daniels anymore. He says they are the same people who have said he's lost a step. So Evil Uno says he could help Christopher Daniels and make him the man he once was. So then we see Evil Uno pulls out a mask. He ends up offering it to Christopher Daniels. So Christopher Daniels ends up taking the mask. He ends up thinking about it for a moment. He ends up thinking about, should he join the Dark Order? And Christopher Daniels is not going to join the Dark Order. Why would he want to be with the Dark Order? So he has the mask in his hand. He's thinking about it. He ends up throwing the mask at Evil Uno. And he goes to attack Evil Uno and the others of the Dark Order. But then the Dark Order ends up attacking Christopher Daniels. So out came SCU and Mad Nick Jackson, the Young Bucks. SCU and the Young Bucks beat up everyone in the Dark Order. Evil Uno gets out of the ring, and Dark Order ends up getting destroyed by the group, by SCU and Young Bucks. And what was really cool was we see Christopher Daniels, hit a really awesome moonsault, which was really cool to see. Overall, we knew that Christopher Daniels wasn't going to join, the Dark Order. So when this sets up, Christopher Daniels, Mad Nick Jackson, and SCU probably taking on, Dark Order. So that's probably going to happen. Probably going to get that. Then we had the Lucha Brothers, Pentagon Jr. and Phoenix versus Cody and Dustin Rhodes. Cody and Dustin came out, of course, with Arn Anderson. Pentagon and Cody started off the match, and we see Pentagon do the Cero Miedo to Cody. Did it right in Cody's face. Cody ends up, hitting Pentagon, punch to the face. They end up countering each other's finishers, and match was just back and forth between these guys. I mean, I like Cody and Dustin; they're great, and Lucha Brothers, they're also good too. And towards the end of the match, we had Cody ends up hitting, the Cody Cutter on Pentagon. Dustin ends up coming in, ends up hitting the Final Reckoning on Phoenix for the pin. So Cody and Dustin end up winning the match. Overall, the match itself, it was a decent match. Really liked the match. So then, post-match, Tony Schiavone ends up coming to the ring. He ends up interviewing Cody. Schiavone ends up asking if Cody accepts MJF's, terms, crazy terms before the match can take place at Revolution. So Arn Anderson gets on gets on the mic and answers for Tony Schiavone, and he says he doesn't understand who is this MJF, and he doesn't get why MJF has so much stroke around here. Arn Anderson ended up saying that Cody may want it, but they need to talk about it first. And they said we'll get back to everyone on that answer. So that was that. So then we went backstage. We saw Alex Marvez. He was talking with Lanny Poffo. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. And he's here to honor his father and his brother. Of course, his brother was the late great Macho Man Randy Savage. Because this was part of the Memphis Wrestling tribute, because they had some stars from Memphis Wrestling there. So Lanny ended up appreciating the opportunity to be here to honor his family. He says he's met the fans. He is understanding what makes AEW, a Dynamite product. So it was a decent interview with Lanny Poffo. I think that's how you pronounce his last name. But it was good. It was good seeing him. And then we had MJF. MJF and Wardlow came out. Dynamite went to commercial, and all we see is during the split screen commercial, just like last week, MJF going around the ringside area, the floor, and he flipped off fans. He ended up taking this fan's sign, and breaking it across his knee, and it looked like he threw it, and it hit like some fan in the face, and he ends up going to this old guy in the front row, and he ends up flipping off that fan, which was funny. And then he got in the ring. Sorry about that, but I was saying, MJF got in the ring, and the commercial was going, and then when Dynamite came back from a commercial, MJF was on the mic, and MJF ended up calling Cody a coward. So he says he then gives Cody 10 seconds to come out to the ring. MJF ended up counting down, and Cody didn't even come out after he counted to 1. After MJF counted to 1. So after that, MJF ended up calling Cody a bitch, and out came DDP, Diamond Dallas Page. DDP came out, and he ends up running down his accolades, and he says he never would have thought he'd be back on TNT. And what was funny was MJF wasn't paying any attention to what DDP was saying. MJF, when DDP was speaking, we saw MJF just on his phone. He was like, and then what was really funny was he ended up tweeting out something. I know MJF tweeted out, and if I could find the tweet here, MJF tweeted out while DDP was talking. MJF ended up saying in his tweet, "Will this old fart ever shut up?" I'm serious. That was what MJF tweeted out when DDP was speaking. So then Diamond Dallas Page ended up saying that he wants to address something from a few weeks back. DDP ended up saying that fans blew up his Twitter, asking if he'd be back for one more match. And MJF finally had enough and says that DDP could lace his boots, even in his prime. So, Diamond Dallas Page ends up stepping towards MJF. MJF ended up saying that, MJF says he's not saying he wants to fight, but maybe someone else might. And so out came the Blade, the Butcher, and the Bunny, aka Allie. So MJF reminds DDP that WCW is dead. And that's, also the average of his fans. So MJF ends up telling DDP he can kiss his ring and leave, or he's going to send DDP to hospice and go after one of his daughters. And he says, "Bang," which I thought was hilarious, very, very funny. I mean, that made that part of the show good. Was when MJF mentioned DDP's daughter. So, MJF, like I said, the guy is one of the best heels in the business. One of the best heels nowadays in pro wrestling. Whenever MJF gets on the mic, you have to listen, because you have to listen to what he says. I mean, he's that good on the mic, in my opinion. The guy knows how to get heat from the fans. So after MJF mentioned DDP's daughter, DDP goes after MJF. He ends up hitting the Diamond Cutter to both the Blade and the Butcher. And MJF ends up going in to strike DDP. DDP almost gives him, nearly gives him a Diamond Cutter. MJF ends up shoving DDP into Wardlow. And, the Bunny ended up stepping in. Allie ended up stepping in. And DDP had his back turn. MJF comes in, low blows DDP. And then we saw QT Marshall, Dustin Rhodes come out. Some referees end up coming out to help DDP. And that's basically, what happened. But really liked this segment. Really enjoyed it. MJF, great on the mic. Knows how to play, himself well. Knows how to get the fans, to show heat for him, because he does his job. He does a good job playing the heel. I mean, he's one of the best heels in pro wrestling nowadays. So, MJF is money. Sorry about that, but I was saying, I really enjoyed this segment with MJF. MJF is money. Do I want to see DDP have, one more match? He could still go, in my opinion. He does, the whole, yoga thing, but DDP still looks good for his age. We'd like to see if he still got it. Let him have one more match. Then after that, we had the best friends, Chuck Taylor and Trent, along with Orange Cassidy, versus the Jurassic Express, Jungle Boy, Luchasaurus, and Marco Stunt. This was a 6-man tag. Very meh match, in my opinion. You had Chuck Taylor and Jungle Boy starting off the match. Chuck Taylor hit an arm drag. Jungle Boy ended up hitting a flipping arm drag and a drop kick. Trent ends up coming in. Marco Stunt ends up, won the tag. And the crowd was behind Marco Stunt here. They were chanting his name. And later on in the match, you had Orange Cassidy. Orange Cassidy came in. He tagged himself in. Comes in. Hands in his pants like always. Being a badass like he is. And he ends up throwing his little light kicks. When Orange Cassidy throws his, little light kicks, gets the crowd reaction. Crowd ends up going, oh, oh, oh. It makes it hilarious. So Orange Cassidy ended up throwing his light kicks. Crowd was chanting, oh. And Orange Cassidy ends up hitting a stunner on Luchasaurus. And he ends up hitting a drop kick on Jungle Boy. Orange Cassidy, still with his hands in his pockets, ends up hitting a suicide dive on the outside. And Chuck Taylor and Trent, along with Orange Cassidy, they were hugging each other in the ring. And Luchasaurus ends up throwing Marco Stunt off the apron. This is what happened at the end of the match. And Jungle Boy finished off the match. Won it for the Jurassic Express because he ended up pinning the Frankensteiner and got the pin. So the Jurassic Express end up winning the match. Overall, very meh 6-man tag, in my opinion. Then we saw Chris Jericho, Sammy Guevara, Jake Hager. They end up making their way to the ring. No Santana and Ortiz tonight. They weren't there for the show. Because all the inner circle has to come out. Jericho, Hager, Guevara, Santana, Ortiz. They all had to be out there. But Santana and Ortiz were not in action tonight. So Jericho, Guevara, and Hager made their way to the ring. Jericho, was waiting for JON Moxley's answer if Moxley wants to join the inner circle. So Moxley head out to the ring. Of course, he came through the crowd. And he says there's a little bit of the bubbly in the ring. A little bit of the bubbly. So Jericho ends up saying that he has the keys to the Ford GT that he promised Moxley. And he says if Moxley wants to join, they are going to party all night long. So Jericho then end up asking Moxley, what is your answer? Are you going to join? The inner circle? And Moxley gets on the mic. He ended up saying that he's had a week to think about it. And that there's a lot that goes into this decision. Moxley ended up telling the fans they may think they know what his goals are, but they don't. And neither does Jericho. So Moxley ends up running down what Jericho offered. And he says he doesn't want any of it. Moxley ended up saying that he didn't come to AEW because someone backed a truckload of money to his house. He ended up saying that he can't be bought. So then Moxley then agreed to join the inner circle. So Moxley ends up unzipping his jacket, reveals the inner circle shirt. Moxley ends up saying that he wants to dominate, and he says the inner circle is the most powerful group in AEW. And he also went to say, it's great. It's great that he's that he's in this group with the greats. He says Jericho is one of the greats of all time, which I ain't gonna disagree with that. So Moxley ends up saying that the Inner Circle will dominate for years to come, and there's only one thing left to do. And he says that's to pop open a little bit of the bubbly. So Jericho ends up spraying some champagne. He's happy that Moxley has joined the Inner Circle. So he ends up wanting the crowd to cheer. And there's some music playing. Moxley is happy there. He hugs Jake Hager, hugs Sammy Guevara. And Jericho ends up saying that this is the beginning of the Inner Circle taking over AEW. Moxley ends up saying that Jericho may have forgotten something. That he wants the keys. He wants the keys to the Ford GT that Jericho promised him. And Jericho ends up retrieving the keys. And Jericho ended up saying to Moxley that the car is worth more than everyone in the crowd makes combined. So he hands over the keys to Moxley. And the crowd ends up telling Moxley, he's sold out. And he says he had a truck he was going to run into the ground. He says now he's got the gift of Jericho. So Jericho ends up bringing up that he and Moxley won their matches at Wrestle Kingdom, which took place this past weekend. And Jericho ends up wanting to celebrate more with champagne, with more of the little bit of the bubbly. And the crowd was surprised by Moxley's answer. So we see Sammy Guevara and Jake Hager. They end up heading out of the ring. Moxley ends up telling Jericho that he forgot one final thing. Moxley ends up saying to Jericho, I was just kidding. I would never join the Inner Circle. He ends up saying that it's a stupid group and you have nothing that I want except for the AEW World Championship. So Moxley ends up smacking Jericho over the head with a bottle. And he ends up landing the paradigm shift on Jericho. Guevara comes in and Moxley ends up hitting, DDT to Guevara. Hager gets in the ring. Moxley bails out of the ring before Hager can get to him. Moxley ends up going back into the crowd. And we see Jericho, knocked out. Hager has Jericho, trying to get Jericho, back up. And what we just see is Moxley in the crowd, being happy, celebrating. So that was how AEW Dynamite went off the air, but we all knew that, Moxley wasn't going to join the Inner Circle. So this was just to build more to the feud between him and Jericho. But it was a nice swerve that Moxley did to Jericho and Guevara and Hager. Moxley swerving them, thinking that Jericho, Guevara, and Hager were all thinking that Moxley would join the Inner Circle, which they would have to be dumb if they would have thought Moxley would join. Moxley ain't joining. No way. Moxley's coming for that AEW World Championship. But I thought it was a pretty decent segment. You know, really I like how Moxley swerved all three of them, and all of us thinking that he joined the inner circle. But all in all, decent segment to end the show. But the show as a whole wasn't that good, in my opinion. But you all may like tonight's show. You all may not like it, but you know, it wasn't that good of a show tonight. So, yes. Anyways, that's it for my review of AEW Dynamite. Thank you all for watching. Hope you all enjoyed this review. And like I said, if you haven't checked out my previous video, my top 10 most anticipated films for this year, definitely give that video a watch. So give the video a thumbs up, comment, subscribe. And until next video, I'll see you all later.